The deadliest pirates in history never touched fresh water for months at sea. Sounds impossible? Here's the thing. They discovered something that kept them alive longer than any navy in the world. But the method they used would horrify you more than their crimes. Life on a pirate ship wasn't all treasure maps and sword fights. The biggest killer wasn't cannon fire or rival crews. It was something far more basic. Water. Fresh, clean drinking water became liquid gold the moment a ship left port. While landlubbers worried about their next meal, pirates faced a much deadlier enemy: dehydration. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, yet not a single drop could safely pass their lips. Ocean water, that's a one-way ticket to madness and death. The salt content would shrivel their organs faster than a raisin in the sun. Desperate pirates who tried drinking seawater found themselves hallucinating, vomiting, and ultimately dying a horrible death. Makes sense, right? Your body needs to use its precious water reserves just to flush out all that extra salt. But here's the cruel irony. Ships could carry only so much fresh water in wooden barrels. A typical pirate vessel might start a voyage with enough clean water for maybe 3 weeks. After that, well, things got interesting in all the wrong ways. Long voyages meant weeks or even months without seeing land. No rivers to refill from, no friendly ports to restock, just endless blue stretching to the horizon while the crew's water barrels slowly emptied. Pirates quickly learned that running out of water meant watching their crewmates die one by one. First the weak, then everyone else. The math was brutal and simple. Each pirate needed at least a gallon of water daily just to survive basic functions. More if they were working hard in the blazing Caribbean sun. A crew of 50 meant 50 gallons disappearing every single day. Do that calculation over a month-long voyage, and you're looking at 1,500 gallons minimum. Then there's the problem nobody talks about. Water doesn't stay fresh forever. Those wooden barrels weren't exactly sterile containers. After a few weeks at sea, the water turned green and slimy. It smelled like a swamp and tasted worse. But when you're dying of thirst, even disgusting water starts looking pretty appealing. Smart pirates knew they needed more than just luck to survive long voyages. They developed clever tricks, desperate measures, and sometimes downright ingenious solutions to keep liquid flowing down their throats. Some methods worked better than others. Some were absolutely brilliant. And the weird part is, many of these water-saving techniques weren't invented by pirates at all. They borrowed ideas from naval officers, merchant sailors, and sometimes pure desperation. But before we dive into their creative solutions, let's look at how pirates handled their most precious resource when supplies started running dangerously low. When the fresh water situation got desperate, pirate captains had to become military strict about every single drop. We're talking about rationing so tight it would make a Depression-era grandmother look wasteful. Most captains divided whatever water remained into daily portions that barely kept a man alive. 1 cup per day was standard when supplies ran dangerously low. That's less water than you probably used brushing your teeth this morning. Makes sense, right? The ship's cook or quartermaster became the most hated person on board during these times. They controlled the water barrel with an iron fist, measuring out each ration like liquid gold. Pirates who tried sneaking extra gulps faced punishments that ranged from losing their share of treasure to getting marooned on the nearest deserted island. But here's where pirate democracy got interesting. Some crews developed a buddy system where everyone drank their daily ration together in groups. No privacy, no sneaking, no cheating. Think of it as the world's most serious drinking game where the stakes were literally life and death. Well, this communal approach served 2 purposes. First, it prevented anyone from hoarding or stealing precious water from their crewmates. Second, it created a twisted form of moral support where everyone suffered equally. Misery loves company, especially when that company is a bunch of desperate pirates floating in the middle of nowhere. The psychological pressure was enormous. Pirates spent entire days thinking about that single cup of warm, stale water waiting for them. Some men went slightly mad from the anticipation, while others developed elaborate mental games to make their ration last longer. And the weird part is, captains often had to post guards around the water barrels. Yes, pirates guarding water from other pirates. These weren't your Hollywood swashbucklers anymore. They were dehydrated, desperate men who would sell their own mothers for 1 extra sip. Smart captains kept detailed logs tracking every drop consumed and every barrel remaining. They calculated sailing distances against water supplies with mathematical precision that would impress a modern accountant. One miscalculation meant the entire crew faced a slow, agonizing death under the relentless sun. Then there's the matter of enforcement. Breaking water rationing rules wasn't just stealing, it was attempted murder of your fellow crew members. The punishment had to be severe enough to deter anyone from risking everyone else's survival. Of course, strict rationing could only stretch supplies so far. When barrels started running completely dry, pirates needed more creative solutions to stay alive at sea. When your water barrels are running dangerously low and death feels closer than the next port, what do you reach for? Well, if you're a pirate worth your salt, you grab the rum. And not just for courage. Pirates discovered something brilliant that would make any modern sailor jealous. They mixed rum with whatever stale water remained, threw in some lime juice and sugar, then called it grog. This wasn't just about getting drunk on the job. Makes sense, right? The rum actually made that disgusting weeks-old barrel water taste like something you could keep down without gagging. But here's where it gets clever. Alcohol kills bacteria. Those nasty little creatures that turn fresh water into a green, slimy nightmare. Rum stopped them dead in their tracks. Pirates figured out that their booze lasted way longer than plain water without turning into something that could poison half the crew. The weird part is, sometimes pirates ditched water entirely. When those wooden barrels finally ran bone dry, rum became their primary liquid. Sure, drinking straight alcohol wasn't ideal for staying sharp during sword fights, but it beat dying of thirst by a long shot. Then there's the British Navy connection that most people miss. Around the mid-1600s, those proper naval officers started giving their sailors daily rum rations. Pirates, being the resourceful criminals they were, immediately stole this idea. Why wouldn't they? It worked perfectly for their chaotic lifestyle. Let's not forget the practical math here. A barrel of rum could replace multiple barrels of water while taking up less precious cargo space. More room for treasure, fewer stops for supplies, and crew members who stayed relatively healthy even when drinking became their main source of hydration. The lime juice served double duty too. It prevented scurvy while adding vitamin C that kept pirates from losing their teeth and developing nasty bleeding gums. Smart pirates realized that staying alive meant more than just avoiding dehydration. But grog wasn't perfect. Drunk pirates made terrible decisions, missed important navigation details, and sometimes fell overboard during storms. Captains had to balance keeping their crew hydrated against keeping them functional enough to actually sail the ship and fight battles. Some crews got so dependent on their rum supplies that running out meant mutiny. Pirates would rather face angry Spanish galleons than face sobriety on a long voyage. Of course, even the cleverest grog mixing couldn't solve everything. When storms hit and rain started falling, pirates had other tricks up their sleeves for catching every precious drop. When you're stuck in the middle of nowhere with nothing but salty ocean stretching to every horizon, rain becomes more precious than gold. Pirates knew this better than anyone. The moment storm clouds started gathering, every crew member scrambled into action like their lives depended on it. Because they literally did. Canvas sails got stretched across the deck at weird angles, creating makeshift water collectors that looked like giant funhouse mirrors. But here's the thing about using sails as rain catchers. They leaked like crazy and tasted absolutely terrible. Think about it. These sails spent months soaking up salt spray, bird droppings, and whatever else the ocean decided to throw at them. So, when that precious rainwater finally trickled down, it came with a delightful cocktail of flavors that would make a modern health inspector faint. The pirates didn't care one bit. Every single container on board got pressed into service. Cooking pots, wooden buckets, empty rum barrels, even boots and hats became part of the water-catching army. Pirates would line up these containers like they were setting up for the world's most important yard sale. The deck looked like organized chaos, but it worked. Well, most of the time. During heavy storms, half the crew would be running around trying to keep their improvised collection system from washing overboard, while the other half desperately tried to funnel water into storage before it all sloshed back into the sea. Makes you appreciate your kitchen faucet, right? The really smart crews learned to read weather patterns. They'd spot those promising dark clouds days away and start preparing their rain-catching setup early. Some captains even changed course to chase storms. which sounds completely insane until you remember that water meant survival. But here's where things got tricky. Rain didn't follow schedules or care about human needs. Ships could go weeks sailing through perfectly clear skies while the crew slowly counted down their remaining drops. Those cloudless stretches tested everyone's patience and turned simple cloud spotting into an obsession. When the rains finally came, it was like Christmas morning for dehydrated adults. The entire crew could drink their fill for the first time in weeks. They'd stand on deck with their mouths open, letting the rain wash away weeks of carefully rationed misery. Then, there were the dry seasons in certain parts of the world where rain became as rare as honest politicians. During these periods, pirates had to get creative with other liquid sources, which led to some pretty desperate measures that would make your stomach turn. When the regular drinking water ran dangerously low, pirates had to get creative with whatever liquid they could find. And I mean, whatever. These weren't picky people when their lives depended on staying hydrated. Weak, watered-down vinegar became a surprisingly common backup drink. Sounds disgusting? Well, it was, but vinegar had something going for it. It lasted forever without spoiling and provided just enough liquid to keep a pirate's throat from turning into sandpaper. Some crews mixed it with their remaining water to stretch supplies even further. Beer presented another option, though not the strong stuff we might think of today. Pirates often carried weak beer that was more water than alcohol. When regular water supplies dwindled, this became their primary source of fluids. The low alcohol content actually helped prevent some bacterial growth, making it safer than stagnant water that had been sitting in barrels for weeks. Then there's the morning dew trick, probably the most labor-intensive way to gather water ever invented. Before sunrise, pirates would crawl around the deck with rags and small containers, soaking up every drop of moisture that had condensed overnight. Takes dedication to survival when you're willing to lick moisture off wooden planks at dawn. Lucky pirates sometimes found themselves carrying cargo that could save their lives. Fresh fruit like oranges, melons, or coconuts provided precious liquid along with nutrients. Smart crews learned to suck every bit of juice from these items when water ran short. Even vegetables could be squeezed or chewed for moisture. But here's where things got interesting for the more adventurous pirates. When sailing near coastlines or small islands, they'd send landing parties to dig for freshwater springs. These natural water sources often bubbled up through sand, especially on tropical islands. Finding one meant the difference between continuing their voyage or turning back to port with empty pockets. The sneakiest method involved raiding enemy ships specifically for their water supplies. Pirates would attack smaller vessels not for treasure, but for their barrels of drinking water. Port towns also provided opportunities for midnight water theft from docks and warehouses. Some crews even tried drinking their own, well, let's just say they recycled what they could when desperation struck. Not recommended, but survival makes people consider options they'd never think about otherwise. Of course, none of these alternative sources provided the reliable, steady supply that proper water barrels offered, which is exactly why pirates became obsessed with protecting and preserving their main water supplies through more sophisticated methods. Keeping water fresh on a pirate ship wasn't just about finding it. You had to protect every precious drop like your life depended on it. Because, well, it did. The ship's cooper was basically the crew's water guardian angel. This guy knew barrels better than most people know their own families. He'd seal those wooden containers so tight that not even a mouse could squeeze through the gaps. Makes sense, right? One tiny leak could drain weeks' worth of drinking water into the ship's bilge. But here's where it gets clever. Some pirates wrapped their water barrels in wet cloth during hot days. The evaporation actually kept the barrels cooler, kind of like an old-school air conditioner. Others buried barrels in sand or moved them to the shadiest parts of the ship. Heat turned good water into a green, slimy mess faster than you could say, "Ahoy, matey." Then there's the trust issue. When you're sharing water barrels with 30 other sweaty, desperate pirates, everyone becomes a potential threat to your survival. One crew member deciding to take a secret midnight drink could doom the whole ship. Some captains posted guards near the water supply, but that meant fewer hands for sailing and fighting. The real nightmare was barrel inspection. Pirates had to check their water stores constantly for leaks, cracks, or that dreaded green slime growing inside. Ever smell water that's gone bad after weeks in a wooden barrel? It's like drinking liquid death. The cooper would tap barrels with his knuckles, listening for that hollow sound that meant water was seeping out somewhere. Well-maintained barrels could keep water drinkable for months if the stars aligned perfectly. The wood had to be properly seasoned, the metal hoops tight enough to survive rough seas, and the whole thing stored in just the right conditions. Pirates treated good barrels like treasure because they literally were treasure. And the weird part is, sometimes pirates fought harder over water barrels than gold chests. Gold couldn't save you when you were dying of thirst 3 weeks from the nearest island. Smart crews developed rotation systems, moving barrels around to prevent any single container from getting too much sun or taking too much damage from the ship's constant rocking. They'd even taste test water from different barrels to catch problems early. But even with all these precautions, water supplies could fail without warning. When that happened, desperate times called for desperate measures. And some pirates had tricks up their sleeves that would make modern scientists scratch their heads. When pirates found themselves staring at endless blue water with empty barrels, they had to get creative fast. Death was literally days away, and desperate times called for desperate measures. The most clever pirates figured out something that sounds almost magical, turning deadly seawater into life-saving fresh water. They'd boil ocean water in large pots and capture the steam as it rose. Here's the genius part. Salt doesn't evaporate with water, so the steam was pure and drinkable. Captain Bartholomew Roberts, one of the most successful pirates ever, actually had his crew build a proper still on deck. This contraption saved dozens of lives during a brutal 3-week stretch without rain. His men used spare copper pipes, old pots, and whatever metal they could find. The result? About 2 to 3 gallons of fresh water per day when the weather cooperated. But here's where it gets interesting. Some pirates discovered they could use broken glass and metal sheets to create solar stills. They'd place seawater in shallow pans, cover them with angled glass, and let the sun do the work. As water evaporated and condensed on the glass, it would drip into collection containers. Slow as molasses, but it worked. The downside? These methods were painfully inefficient and dangerous. Boiling water meant burning precious wood or coal that crews needed for cooking food and emergency warmth. Pirates had to weigh survival against future needs constantly. Plus, working with boiling water and makeshift equipment on a rocking ship was a recipe for serious burns. Most crews only attempted desalination when facing certain death from thirst. The process was exhausting, time-consuming, and could easily backfire if someone got careless with the equipment. One wrong move, and you'd lose both the seawater and your makeshift still. Then, there's the math problem. A grown man needs about half a gallon of water daily just to survive. With 20 or 30 crew members, even the best pirate stills couldn't keep up with basic needs for long periods. Smart captains treated these emergency techniques like insurance policies, helpful in a crisis, but never the main plan. They'd train a few crew members in the process during calm weather, so when disaster struck, someone knew what to do. Well, desalination kept some pirates breathing a little longer, but it wasn't exactly a permanent fix. The real masters of pirate survival knew they needed multiple strategies working together. Smart pirates knew their survival depended on more than just finding water. They had to squeeze every drop of hydration from whatever they could get their hands on. And here's where things get interesting. Food became their secret weapon against thirst. Citrus fruits weren't just tasty treats on pirate ships. Oranges, limes, and lemons packed serious hydration power while fighting off scurvy at the same time. Makes sense, right? These fruits were like nature's sports drinks, delivering both water and vitamin C in one juicy package. Pirates who raided merchant ships loaded with fruit cargo hit the jackpot. They gorged themselves on oranges until their fingers were sticky and their thirst was gone. But here's the tricky part. Salted pork and hardtack biscuits were pirate staples, yet these foods made thirst 10 times worse. Well, experienced crews learned to time their meals carefully. When water supplies ran dangerously low, they'd cut back on the saltiest rations and focus on anything that wouldn't leave them gasping for more liquid. Then there's the fascinating world of pirate democracy at work. Every barrel of water belonged to the entire crew, and captains who hoarded supplies for themselves often found themselves voted out, or worse. The quartermaster kept detailed records of every drop remaining, and weekly crew meetings meant everyone knew exactly how dire their situation was getting. Water became the primary target during raids, not gold or silver. Pirates would attack coastal towns specifically to refill their barrels, sometimes ignoring valuable cargo completely. Imagine being a merchant and watching pirates rush past your expensive silks just to get to your well. The most successful pirate crews developed what we'd call supply chain management today. They mapped out reliable water sources along their routes, established hidden caches on remote islands, and maintained relationships with friendly ports where they could resupply without getting arrested. And the weird part is how this water obsession shaped pirate culture entirely. Crews that managed their hydration well could stay at sea for months, giving them huge advantages over poorly organized rivals. They could wait out Navy patrols, follow treasure ships across vast distances, and strike when their enemies least expected it. These weren't just bloodthirsty criminals stumbling around the ocean. They were surprisingly sophisticated logistics experts who understood that controlling their water supply meant controlling their destiny. The pirates who mastered hydration management became legends, while those who didn't became cautionary tales whispered in taverns. Without proper water planning, even the fiercest pirate crew would find themselves helpless against the ocean's endless thirst.